Hey there, I'm Kevin.
And I'm Jamie, and we're your co-hosts for Two Clicks in a Pod.
Join us as we explore our missed times, stories, and memories due to divorce and a 1,000-mile separation.
I can't wait. You ready to get into it, Kev?
I am. Hey, Jamie, you think they're going to swear?
Oh, yeah. Consider yourselves warned. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Jamie.
Hi, guys. We're here once again from the studios. 1, 2, and 3 today. 2 clicks in a pod. Click 1, Kevin.
That's right. Bringing in a third person. Today we have Dr. Allison Dru, who's a clinical psychologist, a Reiki Master, and a spiritual awakening guide. Her longtime passion has been to bring her clients to the awakening and healing experiences that they are ready for, in the language of modality that speaks to their soul. She is part Midwest, part East Coast, having moved to Philadelphia from Missouri when she was 24. She is a loving mother of 2. She has a freshman in high school and a freshman in college. So welcome to 2 Clicks, Allison.
Thank you so much, Jamie and Kevin. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a little bit more of an introduction to share with everybody. Allison is actually my neighbor who I had the pleasure of meeting. I guess it's been how long have you been in the house there, Allison? 3 years now?
Yeah, 3.5.
3.5 years. And Allison is my neighbor that if we happen to stumble into the same neighborhood happy hour or get together, I am always so excited to see her because we have the best conversations. I always enjoy speaking with you and learning from you, and just think you're a very brilliant and interesting mind. So I'm so excited to have you on today and learn more about your background and kind of what you've heard of us here on 2 Clicks. So last time we talked, you and I were prepping a little bit for this, and I know you had an opportunity to listen to a few episodes, but the background of 2 Clicks has been strongly built upon relationships, and specifically Dad and I's relationship, parent and child, and the challenges that we faced. So we thought you would be a great addition to the show to hear a little bit more about your background and how your own relationships brought you to your current day, your trajectory through your background in clinical psychology, now focusing on spiritual awakening. So I'm going to be quiet and turn it over to you and let you give us maybe a little bit more of your own background and history there.
Oh, thank you so much. You're so kind. It's been great living in this neighborhood. It's been like a new lease on life, and I always enjoy talking with you as well, even if it's just like quickly. So full disclosure, I hope that I am brilliant. When we talk, I am sipping a little bit of coffee to try to recharge my brain cells. So I may want to see later on tonight if you want to go for like a quick run or something, like around 11 p.m. That would be good.
We'll put the headlamps on and head out. So yeah,
perfect.
Spot all of our neighborhood wildlife for sure.
Oh my goodness. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that introduction. I'm 53 years young. And so I feel like I've lived so many seasons of life already, and I hopefully have a lot more seasons left. So relationships, career trajectory, all those things. I was born in Missouri and into a pretty complicated family. And we were Pentecostal Christians in the buckle of the Bible Belt. Turns out my father was gay. He kind of tried to come out before my parents got married, but they were at California Lutheran College. And, his advisor was like, just get married. So That's what he did. Right. And then they moved from California to the Midwest. He was a professor at a Christian college. My mom worked at a Christian publishing company. We went to church probably 4 times a week. And so all of this stuff, including addiction, was like brewing below the surface. That broke open when I was...
Real quick, I want to ask you this.
Yeah.
I think you've shared, but remind me, you have siblings, correct?
I do. I have one sister who's 2.5 years older than me.
Okay. So you were the youngest of 2. All right. Just wanted to set the stage with that as well. Okay. Got it.
No, that's really good context. Yes. And actually kind of a big part of how things ended up for me. So with a lot of addiction and anger and conflict kind of brewing below the surface, we lived in this picture perfect household that would be on the cover of like Metropolitan Home magazine, right? My
Mm-hmm.
sister, being a little bit older than me, kind of, I think, saw through some things. I was none the wiser. Well, at least consciously. I just like really don't remember much of my childhood. Um, I do in much more recent years through all the healing work I've done. I understand why I don't remember my childhood. There was actually some pretty significant abuse. So
Right.
being
Mm-hmm.
the youngest and the smallest person in the household, um, I would say each of them had their hands on me in some way or another. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just sort of like checked out for childhood. Got straight A's, went and got a PhD. I was just like, my brain and reading books was my coping mechanism. So
That was
it's,
how you escaped all of to find your own place, to be in your own world.
yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
exactly it, to find my own place and be my own world. And that's how, like, I remember sitting in my high school classroom in English class and being like, I'm going to move to St. Louis, at least to St. Louis or the East Coast. I just like
Mm-hmm.
locked in. I was like, get me the F out of here.
Yeah.
And
What I'm curious in that kind of an upbringing, such a strong religious upbringing, I'm assuming that were all of your friends in that, were they all or most of them from church? Like, were you
Pentecostal.
surrounded? Thank
Yeah.
you, Pentecostal. Yeah, were you just completely inundated in that, and that there really was no escape, even through school or through outside relationships?
that's a really good question. I definitely had friends at church, and then I
Mm-hmm.
had friends at school. And I played basketball, so I did kind of have a friend group, but I was a little bit alone all the time because when you've got early abuse and you're sort of told like, well, you're gifted and you're difficult, and my parents believed in spanking. There was a lot of like trying to figure out how to break my will, basically.
Mm-hmm.
um, it made me kind of brittle to the outside world. So people liked me. I had one-on-one relationships. And I remember this really poignant thing. Someone wrote in my yearbook in high school. It wasn't somebody that knew me well or that I knew well. She said, I wish if I could give you any gift, it's that you could see yourself the way that other people see you.
Oh, that's
Because I had,
awesome.
right? I just kind of like
Yeah,
had this mindset of like, I am fucked up. And if I can just get into graduate school and get out of
and get
here,
out. Yeah,
I'll hopefully stop drowning constantly.
right. Isn't that? I
So
just think that's so cool to hear somebody write that, because Dad mentioned in a previous episode when we were kind of doing our research and prepping for this, Dad, you mentioned going back and rereading high school yearbooks and just
Oh
the
wow.
things that you read
mhm.
about yourself. Like, he felt invisible and just kind of not really known or seen. And as he was reading some of these messages, and I can let you speak for yourself, Dad, but obviously you kind of shared a similar thing, just like people did know who I was and saw me.
Yeah, I think that's somewhat true because you go back and realize, but it was your close knit friends, the people that were the hip ones and the ones that you really wanted to be like or emulate with. Those they were still kind of standoffish, and those did not sign your yearbook, but it really was, that was kind of self-healing as well, thinking that you are invisible, or better yet, just, I always say I was shy. And then anybody that I tell I was shy when I was a youngster was just that there's no way, you're not a
Mm-hmm.
shy guy. But you learn, you grow, you get out of the hole. And then once you jump in and get a career and start a business, you pretty much have to become the salesman as well as the guy responsible for design and all that. But and I came from a Catholic background of just being in a Catholic church from early on, and Catholic school from first grade through 12th grade. So
Mm-hmm.
church was always important.
Mhm.
The reverence of church was important. When you mentioned your father was gay and practicing in a Pentecostal church, and I've seen a lot of documentaries. We're kind of I'm a documentary nut. So just, some of the abuse that goes on in some of those more, for lack of a better word, cultish cultish religions. And again,
Great
there's
word.
abuse in any religion, and I don't care if it's a religion, Boy Scouts, or whatever. Any place you have children, you have abuse going on. Man, that just had to. I can't even imagine, just in your just in what you shared, how that even happens. But then again, there are tons of studies and, like I said, documentaries of how kids have been lured and, taken advantage of by people that they respect and
People of
look up
power.
to. And better yet, the stories that come and unfold of just how innocent we are at that age, to where we'll believe anything. And that just amazes me,
Yeah.
that that can even happen. But oh my, that's incredible. And I'm not saying incredible in a bad way. It's just incredible that you, I think, at what it sounds like, at a pretty early age, realized that you needed to get out, or figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah, I guess that's my question, is when do you have your first memory or recollection of knowing? You mentioned I can go to St. Louis, I can go to the East Coast, but that you needed to physically move in order to get that escape. When do you remember that, having that actual awareness? How young were you?
Well, I remember much of childhood, like, I can't wait till I'm older. It's going to be better when I'm older, that feeling. But that specific feeling of like, I've got to get at least to St. Louis, or that was high school. That was probably like maybe around 15 years old. And it probably was about my family, but it was also about like these people that I'm in school with, and this mindset that I'm just like you, it was like a cult, this mindset that I'm exposed to constantly. It's not me. It doesn't fit. It's, I need to be somewhere else where there's more diversity and there's more, I mean, the town that I'm from is a college town. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a college town in the Ozarks. It's probably, at the time, was like 150,000 people. It's bigger now. But it wasn't big enough. I needed to get out there.
Well, and I've shared this with you. Again, this was one of those things when, like, I think the first night we met, somehow we got down this path, and I said, you mentioned, oh, I'm from Missouri. And what part? And you were like, Missouri? And I said, well, my brother lives in Springfield. And you were like, I'm from Springfield. But, he's there via my sister-in-law. But I think it's interesting to hear when you say you just felt like these aren't my people. And that I've made a similar comment when I meet people from up here in Delaware County, and they hear my accent. So they're like, well, where are you from? And I give the background, and it's always like this shock of leaving. Why would you leave the South? And I think more so for like the warm weather. And I always just tell them, I'm like, well, there's a reason that got me here, but ultimately what made me make the choice of wanting to move here was I just felt like I belonged here, coming and dating my husband long distance for a year. And I would come up to Media, Pennsylvania for the weekends, and just had so much joy and for so many reasons, and not just because of spending time with him, but I loved the town. I loved the people. I loved the culture. I loved that we could go to Maryland. We could go to New York. We could go to the beach. We'd go to the mountains. Like, I just thought, this is amazing, and finding that and feeling like this is where I belong. It feels really good. So I guess I am curious, like, if we go 2 steps back, you mentioned St. Louis or East Coast, but what finally made you make that's a big jump from Missouri to Philadelphia.
It's called school.
Yeah. Well,
bingo.
Yep.
You got it.
I mean, I read her bio. I mean, it's called school.
You know what? I actually applied to several graduate schools in Kansas City and in St. Louis and didn't get in. So I was a young, I was a young graduate. I was 21 and still really sheltered when I was graduating college, and was kind of from a no-name school. It was a state school, but when you're applying to PhD programs, And I had my heart set on it because I thought I was going to be a college professor. PhD programs, at least at the time, were more competitive than medical schools to get into. You had to be, 300 people would apply and 8 would get in. And so you really had to be a good fit with the professor that you were talking to. And the first 2 times that I applied to schools in St. Louis and Kansas City and more locally, Illinois, I didn't get in because I didn't know exactly what I was doing. So I got a master's degree in the meantime, had a really good professor from the University of Iowa. And she was like, let me teach you how to get into a PhD program. And so I did it right the 3rd time. And I canvassed the country. There were 3 different schools in Texas that I could have gone to. And I got interviews at all of them. And I was like, oh, these are not my people. Like, this is, no. Like, I'm trying to get out of Missouri. I'm not trying to go to Texas. No offense to Texans, but they weren't my people. Yeah. And then I got the interview in Philadelphia at Temple University. And I was like, oh, yes. And I stayed at a bed and breakfast in West Philly, and it snowed. And myself and the girl that I was staying with, we took a Greyhound to New York and saw the Empire State Building. And I was like, yes. It was like that working girl moment. Yeah.
Yes. You're like on the ferry. The music's in the background. Oh, yeah. I know it. Yeah. So good. And I love that your first experience of being in Philly, you were just like, yes, I will say this. My first experience coming to Philly, not media, but going into the city, we were coming in from the airport and going in I like to call it the back way, where you go up into the city,
exactly
like through UPenn, and where people were literally living in homes I think were made of boxes, or they looked like them. And my eyes were probably as big as they ever were. And it was the first time, and I had seen like homeless in Orlando. I've seen all that, but this was the first time where I saw real poverty, and just these people are living very different than anything I had ever seen. So my first like reaction to the city of Philadelphia was like, whoa, and then like I think I'll stay over here in the burbs a little bit. But over time, when spending more time with people that were from here, and that showed me around the city and all the different neighborhoods. And that is a real part of Philadelphia, but there's also many other parts of Philadelphia that to me, I think it truly is a beautiful city, and obviously has a lot to offer. But yeah, my first experience was very like, whoa, where am I? Yeah.
I will say that I was in culture shock for 3 full years. I will say that. I was living in Mount Airy, which is like the northwest part of Philadelphia, like in Philadelphia, proper. But I would take the train to Temple University, to North Philly, for school. So what you saw on that drive, I saw on a daily basis. Yeah. I walked up on drug deals. I had my apartment broken into. I had my car broken into, like so many scary experiences that I never spoke about to my parents, by the way. And then finally, 3 years in, 3 or 4 years after being here, I dated a local. I dated somebody who was a restaurant guy in Fairmount. He was basically like the mayor of Fairmount, Irish Catholic, big family. He showed me around, and that's when I really fell in love with Philly.
Right. And you almost need that. You need people that can show you all the different pieces and make you find that respect for it. But that's really cool. I guess I'm curious what
I need to jump in real quick. You and Jamie have similar backgrounds, because she had that same thing going on in her college years of Tallahassee, Florida, with regards to living in the hood and deals and break-ins and people coming in and out of their house when they were and weren't there. So it was kind of strange.
Yeah, we got robbed my sophomore year. We tell this in I think the episode when I talk about being in Tallahassee, we got robbed while we were all out of town. It was 5 of us, so 4 girls, and we were out of town. All of us happened to be out of town for the weekend. It was like, a holiday weekend. and we got robbed, and they actually stole my roommate's car. Like, they loaded all of our stuff into her car and took off with it. And then, and
Wow.
she did end up getting that car back and got it repaired and everything, but it was quite the learning experience. And unfortunately, we did tell our parents, and then we ended up with a security system that never got used. But anyways, we had, I mean, lots of things that just, yeah. I mean,
The sign out front kept them back, Allison.
Yeah, that's right.
It was the fact they had the sign in the yard. Yep.
The what is it called? ADT? Is it ADT?
Yep,
was
ADT.
that the big? That's what we had.
That was a big one back then.
That's what we.
Yep.
Well, so you make the choice to go to Temple. I'm very curious. What was the response from your family when you said, "I'm moving to go do this"?
You ready for some fresh family dysfunction?
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait.
Oh, goodness.
Please take it away from us.
I'm going to hoard the family dysfunction over here for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, take it.
So at that point, my father had already moved to Florida. So as soon as I graduated high school, I was 17, and he was like, all right, I shouldn't say peace out. He needed to go live his life. He stayed in Springfield, Missouri.
Had he come out at that point?
Yep.
Okay.
He came out.
Did he go to South Beach?
Divorced. He was in Tampa, St. Pete.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Pete
Great
Beach.
spot.
Pete Beach. Yep.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. He was in Tampa, St. Pete. So he had gone. My sister had gotten married and moved to a rural area of Missouri with her husband. And so at that point, it was just my mom and I who were still in Springfield. And I got married. I didn't mention this part, but at 24, I was applying all over the country to these graduate schools, and my college boyfriend was like, basically like, well, let's get married. And I was like, okay.
Take me with you, please.
I know. Oh God. So he moved with me, but 3 years later, when I was getting divorced from said boyfriend, my mom said to me, when you were moving to Philadelphia, I asked you, so, I'm heartbroken. I'm 27. I don't know what's happening. And she said, when you were moving to Philadelphia, I asked you if you had to choose between marrying your husband or going away to graduate school, which would you choose? And she said, you very boldly said, I would choose both, which was her way of saying, you don't get to have it all. And I knew it.
Oh, wow.
So I was in the middle of heartbreak. Yeah, that's just like, how your parents, Jamie, how your parents say like shitty things and they stick in your memory?
Yeah.
She can't take that back,
stuck. Yeah. So he moved with you. So you very much, when you guys got divorced, it was not something it sounds like you were heartbroken, but was it something you wanted, or was this his decision? Like, did he get here and go, I don't want to live this life?
Yeah, it was all of that, all of those things. So he was never comfortable in Philadelphia. He had grown up really in the middle of nowhere, Missouri, and grew up, hunting and fishing. And whenever I check in on him on Facebook, he's still like winning bass fishing championships. And it's super cool. Like, that was what he's built for. And coming to Philadelphia and, trying to work at giant stocking shelves or running a restaurant or stuff like that, he really tried. We were not well matched. My father said, like, at your wedding, every adult knew that you shouldn't be getting married. And I was like, what? So we grew apart, and it was painful for both of us. And I suggested couples counseling, and he said, I suggested separating and doing couples counseling. He's like, if we're separating and living apart, then I'm just going to go back home.
Yeah.
And so I initiated it. I was the one that was like, I don't think this is working. And it was, it was the right thing for both of us. He, I think he's pretty happy now. He's got a boy and a girl. He's like, fishing all the time. We're just like, and I actually remember when we were engaged and planning the wedding, I remember thinking, oh God, what are we going to talk about on our honeymoon?
Oh, wow. Yeah. And you were already having those thoughts. Yeah.
Yes.
You don't know how to put a worm on a hook or bait or or tie a knot around a bobber. I mean, come on.
Listen, I did all of those goddamn things. I put
and thoroughly enjoyed it. I hear that in your voice.
Yes. No, actually, I did enjoy fishing. It was dressing myself up in camouflage and sitting under a tree waiting for the turkey to come. Yeah. That was not as fun for me.
Yeah. When they tell you can't talk, they're like, you just have to sit here quietly. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that.
You were a part of the Missouri State Bears program, so you actually got some little touch of wildlife within campus. Go Bears! I mean, go Bears! If you'd gone to Chicago, it would all been good. It's you didn't get on the old Philly fly. Fly Eagles fly. So
I know, or the Temple Owls.
My last question, or of that chapter, maybe, but is. You kind of had to give Mom a break because she called you out and she actually was a little bit truthful in that statement that just came to pass.
Yeah.
Did you ever reconcile? I know that hurt, but it kind of goes back to the statement you said about, everybody at the wedding wondering how long, everybody's betting bets, which I've heard the same story at one of my weddings that, this isn't going to last, third wedding. And everybody knows it but you, and then you find out after the fact that they all told you that. You just didn't want to listen.
Yeah. I will say from her, it was really about her feeling like everyone else had left her and now I was the last to go.
Oh.
It was more that but I hear what you're saying. It was that her way of, I mean, at that point, I think I was already married and had already accepted the offer. So it was sort of like a last minute dig more than hey, can I sit you down and have this conversation with you?
Yeah.
That was her goodbye hug.
That was her goodbye hug. You got it, Kevin.
You're like, it didn't feel good. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't feel good. It wasn't a warm hug. But it didn't sound like there were many warm hugs from Mom anyway.
Correct.
From what I read into it earlier. So.
Yeah, correct. I think that she had a pretty hard life. And, these days we've got so much of the benefit of TikTok therapy and, getting therapy is pretty destigmatized now. Right. And although she did have a lot of access to therapy, it was hard for her to ever take accountability for how her trauma affected the rest of us. Yeah. And so I think, to be fair, my generation is the one where we fight like hell to heal ourselves because we know we just have more awareness about intergenerational trauma. Mm-hmm. And so what people did to her, she turned around and did to me. My parents did say their goal was that each generation would get healthier and healthier. They wanted that consciously. Mm-hmm. They really consciously wanted that, but they didn't have enough a hold of their own demons to not inflict stuff on me. And so that's why when my kids were maybe 2 and 6, I ended contact with my mother and my sister because they were still so toxic for me that I was becoming enraged with my own children. It happened one time where I was just like yelling and I was like, oh my God, I was yelling to my kids, I have needs too. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, that's fucking, what is, and I traced it back and I talked to my husband at the time and I was like, I think it's time for me to not have contact because my mother and sister would just spin me out and I couldn't be present. I couldn't stop the cycle. Yeah.
That's, and you're in your mid 50s. I mean, I'm getting ready to turn 70. I think that's the same thing in that's a generation difference, but Um, and Suzanne, who's here with me, my new fiance, she's
Congrats.
55, so she kind of falls into that same mindset that you just expressed about trying to figure it out, get out, and
Yeah.
prove to everybody that you can be something better than what you're leaving. I think we all feel that way. I know I did at some time, but I know my dad's dad wasn't kind to dad, and dad had his moments of, just I don't think dad was physical. Didn't get any physical issues there, but I mean he was who he was based upon what his dad, as you know, being the therapist. But I've had enough counseling to have 78.2 hours credit into my name, but
I
that's
love it.
that's that's counseling. That's not therapy. But
It's all
yeah,
good.
I think that's awesome that you were able to make that decision, which it is hard. I mean, but we all
Mhm.
have those. We all have those toxic relationships, as toxic as they can be. You feel obligated with the love that you had or the caring that you had to let that go in
Mm.
spite of how damaging it is. And
Mhm.
that's truthful in relationships or marriages um, or friends, and
Yeah.
especially in addiction stories, for sure. That's, you're leaving someone that's in need of some help. They just can't find their own way to get the help. And
Yeah.
that is a beast in itself. It's just not as easy as going to the spigot at the sink and turn it on and turn it off. It's just not that. It's not
Yeah.
that way. So
Yeah.
I
I
agree. It's
understand.
a tough boundary to set. Um, and I think the relationships that can be repaired, the ones where like both sides will say, "Hey, I messed up and I'm sorry, and let's like talk it through."
Mm-hmm.
Those relationships I think have hope, and those relationships can be repaired.
Hmm.
But the relationships where that never happens, where the person just keeps being abusive and can
Hmm.
never take a look at themselves, just in my personal world, I won't tell anybody else what to do, but in my personal world, that's where I had to draw the line. Is that there was never any like something I've said hurt you. I can tell. Like
Right.
what did do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I do. And I think that's, I mean, because for our own story, I've had people ask me many times, how were you able to forgive your dad? How were you able to accept that? How did
Mm.
you move on from that? And I mean, I always just said, because we got there together eventually, I mean, it was always one of us coming and saying, hey, that was me, my bad. And we've both had to do that at some point in our relationship where one of us came to the table and said, that was my fault. And it didn't mean the other person didn't add to it or bring to it, but it's always been, I think, a mutual thing where we've been able to both say, I'm sorry first. And then from there, you can talk and you can communicate and find your
Yeah.
way to forgiveness. But yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now, of all the shit that we lived through, I mean, and we went through phases of not communicating
Yeah.
because I did say, no, I'm not signing up for this until he is here with me, until we are back to the same place again.
Mm.
And we got there, but it took time. One round took a long time. And but again, I think you're right. It's not that people are incapable of forgiving, but I can't imagine having to deal with what you dealt with for having a mom that never could say, "Hey, that was my bad on
Yeah.
that one." Because I mean, I say it all the time
Oh,
to
dude.
to my children. I mean, I said it
Yeah.
to Reese yesterday when I flipped out on her because I couldn't get her to learn. We're trying to learn how to swallow pills now, and she was
Yeah.
being dramatic, and I'm like, "You have to swallow this pill," and I
Which
lost my
ones? Which
patience.
ones?
Oh,
Which ones? What are we
Advil.
swallowing?
Advil.
Oh,
Ibuprofen. And I lost my patience and I freaked out and because I'm very impatient. And then I had to walk away. And then I went back and I said, and she's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, I am sorry. I
Yeah.
I am at fault here, not you. I am the parent. I need to be patient. But I guess I'm just saying I can understand why you cut that relationship.
Yeah.
And for the protection of not just yourself, but for the protection of your children
For
and
my
your
kids.
other, again, you mentioned you were married again. So at some point, I know you made the choice to get married again. And obviously, spoiler alert, you're twice divorced. So that, that didn't work. But I just think too, and I want to hear you talk about this because you said you made the choice to say, hey, I think we need to separate. And in the second marriage, I think you've told me in the past that you also at that time said that. And I just think that speaks to your strength because I can't imagine that in either circumstance that was easy and probably more challenging in the second with children involved.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of respect for you that you were able to make that call to know it's time for me to move on to be the person I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for both of us. The second divorce was even more mutual than the first. But when I brought up separation to him, he was like, "Thank you for calling it. You're always the first to bring things up. I just really appreciate that."
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was not easy. I want to go back for a quick second about kids and apologies.
Oh yeah.
Um, a couple of things. When Rachel was born and I was holding her when she was like a newborn baby and then, 6 months old, 1 year old, I looked at her and I thought to myself, what do I want for this child? And I thought the two things that I didn't have, like I want her to feel safe and I want her to feel loved. I'm not saying that I wasn't loved, but I want her to feel
Mm-hmm.
safe, want her to feel loved. And then when she got to be a toddler, I added in my mind, I want her to have what psychologists call intact reality testing. In other words, I want her to know the truth for herself.
Mm.
I don't want to fake things for her. I don't want to lie. I don't want to gaslight her. If she's upset about something, I want to take her seriously. So those are my, tenets. So, when she's 2 and 3 and 5 and I do things like flip out or I'm angry or whatever, every time I will, and I learned this from my dad, every time I will apologize and own, when it's the grown-up's fault, you let them know. And what I love about Rachel is she doesn't say it's okay. Like I say, I'm sorry. She doesn't say it's okay. She says, thank you,
Mm.
which is different than trying to make me not worry about it or not make me feel guilty. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Girls got boundaries.
I'm curious what you think about my response to this. So when my kids will tell me, hey, I'm really sorry, I always say, well, what are you sorry for? And a lot of times they'll say, well, I don't know. I just know you're not happy with me. And I will pause. I'll say, well, yeah, I am frustrated or whatever, but let's talk about why mom is frustrated or unhappy because it doesn't do you or me a lot of good if you don't get it. Why are you? And if you're not sorry, because I'm a big person. It's like, if you're not sorry, don't say you're sorry. I don't like, I want, you wrote this in something like that about being genuine and authentic. And when I read that, I thought, yes, because I was literally just telling my friend that the other day. I said, my biggest pet peeve in life is just unauthentic people, like people who just aren't real. I'd rather you look me right in the face and say, I just don't like you. And I'd say, I respect that. There's plenty of people that I know don't mesh with me that I always said this, that you either love me or you don't. There's not a lot of in between. So I resonated when you said that about being authentic. And I think that's what I'm trying to get with my kids is just, I want them to be authentic people too. So it's like, if you're not sorry, don't be sorry, but,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
communicate that,
I love what you're saying to them. And I might add in Um, what else might you be feeling? Are you feeling uneasy because I'm angry and you don't know why? Are you feeling frustrated? Are you, not that you have to psychoanalyze your child in the moment, but
Yeah,
like they're
yeah.
feeling something. It may not be sorry, but they're feeling some kind of unease, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh
so you might
yeah.
want to ask them
Just
like, well, what
explore
do you
that.
think?
What does it feel like? But I like Rachel's response of just saying thank you. And I think that's beautiful because that's really all you have to say. It doesn't have to be more than that. Just thank you, and I I appreciate that. We can
Yeah,
now we can move on, I get, because we all make mistakes and we all
we do.
err, but you know,
Yeah, I
recognizing
take
that
the
is
approach.
important.
I kind of take a different approach. Just in, I forget what the book had to deal with. Asking or forgiveness, asking for forgiveness, and better yet, it's easy to say I'm sorry, but if you go in and I try to say I can say I'm sorry, and better yet, I need to ask for forgiveness for you know whatever I said or whatever I did that I know you're upset or you're hurt about,
Mhm.
and I hope at some point in time you will be able to forgive me,
I love
because
that.
asking for forgiveness is one thing, receiving it is what heals it, and
Mhm.
that's you don't always get it at first. It's like you said, well, thank you is at least a consideration that I'll think about it. And my point there would being, if you don't ask for forgiveness, she's never going to come back and say, well, mom, I forgive you,
Mhm.
what?
Mhm.
And maybe she will. If you don't ask, you'll never get a true answer and
Wow.
that's the most important thing for me, is to know that the apology is accepted, and the way it is accepted for me is just, and that's I would not have known that without reading that. Just be bold enough to apologize for what you did and ask for forgiveness.
I
And
like that. Yeah.
yeah.
That's so beautiful. That's like such a thorough, intentional communication. It's much more than a throwaway, like moving right along. I love that.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. So, well, okay, so then let's kind of go forward a bit. Obviously, you are um my neighbor, raising, you have a college student and a high schooler, but you're embarking into this next phase of your life. We talked about this in our last episode. I did a little Googling on phases of adulthood. And my joke was that technically we are all in, well, no, dad's not. Dad's on the out of this now. But we are in what they call middle adulthood. And middle adulthood, if you read the timeline, is like 30 to 64 years old. And in the middle adulthood, it's all in this time where you're raising your children and life is really stressful and you're trying to build a career. And basically, it's all the hard stuff. And you're stuck in this for 34 years. And then you get to late adulthood, which is where dad is, and you're retired, and it transitions into, this is the time where you can really start exploring yourself, self exploration, and picking up your own hobbies. And my joke was, I have to wait like 20 more fucking years to do something for myself. I don't think so. Like, I'm not waiting that long. But my point in all of that is, you
Nor
mentioned
should
kind of
you.
your phases, but um so I'm very much taking this middle adulthood, like, yes, I want to raise intelligent, competent people, and I also want to thrive in my career, but by God, I'm going to find a hobby right now, hence why I'm on this podcast. But I guess I'm curious, where you're at now in your middle adulthood, and the things you're doing for yourself, and what led you into the work you're doing now with helping others going through spiritual awakenings.
Kevin, do you want to add on any questions to that? That was
No, I just
amazing.
you got a short window here. You only got about 10 years, so before you join me.
Oh God.
You're getting
Well,
close. You're almost there. You're almost there,
Almost,
young lady.
almost, almost. Yeah. Yeah.
hot on my heels. Yes. Um, wow, that's such a good question. Yes, I feel like there's a treadmill that we're on once we have kids. You know, if you're lucky enough to get the American dream, which is some sort of partnership, some sort of, I don't know, work, meaningful work, and maybe kids. Like that's what we're all aiming for, right? And then as soon as you get it, it's almost like joke's on you. Like it's hard.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. Yeah.
It is so much work. And one of my favorite quotes about having kids when they're very young is having kids and keeping a clean house. No, what is it? Oh my God. Something about like trying to eat Oreos and brush your teeth at the same time. Right? Something about like having kids and having a clean house, something like that.
That feels right.
I definitely felt the treadmill in the early childhood years, especially because my husband at the time worked a lot of hours. I was commuting to Center City every day, which is like an hour commute when all is said and done, and seeing clients in my private practice, definitely on that treadmill. I will say that this path of spiritual awakening that I've been on for the last, like since around 2011, 2012, has not been easy. It's not actually something that I chose. It's more like something that happened to me, which is often what people experience, especially around midlife. You know, there's just sort of like things start falling apart. Your relationship, your job, your parents' health, your kids, a bunch of things fall apart. And you're like, wait, is there more out there? What is the meaning of life? You know, it's like an existential crisis.
Right.
What happened to me was I just started doing yoga. So yeah, looking for a hobby, but also looking for some healing. And the moment that I dropped into my body and started doing yoga, I started having memories of early abuse. And I was like, oh my God, what's this? Now I was in therapy at the time. I had that support, but I started Googling Reiki. I was like, I think I need something. I just Googled and I called somebody. And so I landed myself working with somebody who does energy healing. And so I simultaneously did analysis. So I was like on the couch, psychoanalysis 4 or 5 days a week, and this energy healing practice, which is like acupressure, body work, and sort of like releasing the blocks out of my body. And that just started a path of learning about intuition, learning about, I did some training with a psychic medium where I, practiced really tapping into my intuition and using that to heal myself. And then shadow work, which is this buzzword these days, but being able to really go into deep meditation and heal parts of myself that really didn't have access to before. I've gotten into past life regression. I've gotten to all kinds of things that have healed things that therapy never got to. So
I'm so curious when the deep meditation, because I'm such a person that I get so stuck in my head. So I've done the, like the Calm app where it's like sit there and try to do the 3-minute meditation, like before you go to bed or the one in the morning. And I have tried this. And as I'm sitting there and I'm listening to what I'm supposed to do with my breathing, and then my mind just goes like, over here. And then I start thinking about, oh my God, am I breathing right? I don't think I'm breathing right. I don't feel like I can breathe. I feel like I'm suffocating. I mean, I go so crazy in my head. And then, but you keep hearing about this, like how great meditation is. And then I start thinking, well, something's wrong with me. Cause like, I can't sit still in my head long enough to do that. And I wonder what that is,
That's called the human experience.
Okay.
That's called being a human being. Absolutely. Okay. And I mean, you are like a type A person. You move fast, you talk fast, you're sort of like always on the go.
Right.
I think if I were you, I would try, if I can make a suggestion, is that okay?
Please. Yes, please.
Because so many people, some people have a flippant response, which is if you're thinking the whole time you're meditating, then you need to meditate longer.
Right.
So you
I've heard that.
Right. And you're like, oh,
right. And I'm like,
off.
no.
Like, yeah. That's not it.
It's obvious you haven't got there yet. So you just got to keep doing it more.
Like, where's the logic in that? Okay.
Yeah. I'm like, no. Yeah. I don't get that. Yeah.
But a couple of things that I've tried, one of them, I don't know if you've heard of tapping. It's like the emotional freedom technique, and it's also called tapping, and it's where you talk through, like, even though I feel anxious right now, I completely love and accept myself. There's like a script of things. So you talk yourself into more of a place of calm, but you also calm your body by tapping. And so I can show you on the video, it's like, even though I feel anxious right now, I completely love and accept myself. And it seems really crazy, but basically, so I'm tapping above my eyebrows, the outside of my eye, under my nose, and so on. These are like acupressure points
I
that,
was gonna say, is it
God,
like stimulation, right? Like you're
it is.
stimulating.
Well,
Yeah.
you're not stimulating, you're actually soothing.
Mm.
It's more like soothing. I feel so relaxed from just doing that. Anyway,
I'm gonna
so
try.
Kind
I'll
of like me
send
scratching
you
my head where I scratch it to where it soothes me, So there you go.
100%. It's kind of like you scratch your head and then you scratch your belly. It's that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll
Interesting.
send you a
Tapping. Okay.
YouTube video. Yeah, I've got a YouTube
Yeah.
video I did on that.
Well, send me that because
Eddie
I
Van
do.
Halen was a good tapper.
This is true.
That's
Oh,
what he's known for, tapping. So there you go.
there you go. He had the secret. The other thing, Jamie, that I do, I don't know if you ever see me do this in the neighborhood, but I take a walk and I talk out loud.
You
I,
actually okay, so I don't I will try that. I have found you've seen me, I like to run, you know that. I
yeah,
don't run in the winter, but I have if I go for a run and something is bothering me, I will work. It's the best place I work things out. Like whether it's I'm looking for an idea for something, or if I'm struggling with a relationship at that time and I don't know what to do, I am able to get that is almost like a meditative state for
it
me.
is.
When I start running, I can get my head will go into that area of question or challenge, and I'll look up and be like, "Oh, it's 10 minutes later and I'm on the downward hill now finally." So, I guess I kind of answered a question for myself. I mean, but the
100%.
walking I could do. I just don't enjoy running in the winter because it's like hard on your lungs, but I
It's so
could walk
hard.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
a great
so
idea.
we think of meditation as sitting quietly with our eyes closed, but there's moving meditation, there's walking meditation, there's chanting meditation, there's tapping meditation. So, like, try Insight Timer. They've got a ton of free things that
Mm,
include, like, there's breath work, there's like all kinds of ways to meditate. You've got to find the way
okay.
that fits for you.
I love that. All right, I'll look into that. And then the other thing I want to follow up on that you mentioned is tell me about this work you did with the psychic medium because I am so interested in that. And I'm just curious, was that something that you believe, did you believe in that ahead of it? Or was it like, I don't know about this, and then you saw it and you're like, wow, I'm a believer.
Yeah, I didn't believe in any of that shit.
Okay. All right.
Did
I want
not
to hear
believe in
about
any of
this.
it. Okay, so I went to Costa Rica on a solo retreat, a yoga retreat, met a bunch of people from New York. It was a great time. We were talking over dinner one night, and I was describing some of the things that happened in my house. Not this house, obviously. And a couple of the women at dinner were like, "Your house is haunted." And I was like, "Nah, I don't believe in that." They were like, "Your
Hmm.
house is haunted." So it got my mind to thinking. I'm laying asleep in the dark in Costa Rica. And I'm thinking to myself, if there's such a thing as ghosts and spirits, like they could be all around me right now. Like, what the fuck, right?
Right.
In that moment, all the power goes out in the place.
Wow.
And I'm next to the kitchen. My little room with I'm sharing with people is next to the kitchen. I hear all the power go down. Everything goes, and then I'm like freaking out in my head. I'm like, ghosts aren't real. Ghosts aren't real. Ghosts aren't real. I start Googling. I grab my phone and I look up. That's how I found this person. I look up a medium and I found her. She was in Delaware at the time.
Hmm.
And she came to my house. She cleared 100 spirits out of my house. And I was like, cool. And then I signed up with her and I worked with her for a couple of years. I was focused a little bit on space clearing for sure, but I was really just learning how to tap into my intuition, how to, clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairsentient. And that's when I learned about like what it's like to be an empath. When you
Mm-hmm.
walk into a room and you feel like energy
Mm-hmm.
and you absorb it and you're like, something happened, something is wrong. That's all part of your intuition. And so I've learned how to heal that, channel that, work with that, and then teach my clients how to do it as well. So no, I
Oh,
didn't
that's
believe in
really
any of that
cool.
shit.
Yeah, that's really cool. And your point about being an empath, I that's interesting because I do feel like for my daughter, I say that all the time. She's
Yeah.
such an empath. She feels everything and she picks up on others' stress and sadness. I mean, I got an email from her French teacher this year that said, basically she's like, I just want to tell you how special your daughter is. I was having a really bad day and she picked up on it and came up to me and said, are you okay? And we were all laughing. We're like, I was telling it, and they're like, well, maybe maybe the teacher needs some help. And I'm like, sure, maybe she does. But at the same time, it was her words about Reese were very kind, because she's like, she's just a special child, and that it meant something to her that I was sad and she wanted to make me feel better.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, that is a very powerful thing, because not a lot of people take the time to make others feel that way. And I think that is very special.
It is. It is. Rachel's the same way, my daughter, and I've had to teach her how to kind of like turn that off sometimes, because when she's in
Yes.
public, she'll actually her hands will get hot and cold because she'll feel people's energy. And so I've taught her, now she's living in a dorm. I've
Oh
taught her
boy.
how to kind of like put herself in a bubble energetically and not let all that stuff run through her, because it can really be disruptive.
Oh yeah, because then you become it becomes it's so much importance gets put on that for them that they can't focus on themselves. So I've said this about Reese. I call it her kryptonite. I'm like, it's her greatest strength and it's also her biggest weakness, just her empathy. And because there are times where you have to kind of shut it off and
Yeah.
worry about you. And now that her being 12 going on, my God, 26, it's like, and
Yeah.
all the things happening at this stage of life with these girls, I'm very much trying to keep her aware, like, okay, we're not gonna dive down that, we're not going down that hole, like that's not a productive hole. And
Yeah.
I understand that friend seems upset, but like, this is kind of drama. So it's like I'm trying to get her to learn what is drama and
Yeah.
what is like real. No, this is where you should really be a friend, and this is where you go in and help that person. So
So good.
yeah,
Yeah.
those are challenges for sure. But well, I love that. I love all the things you've done. I think that your mind and how open you are to, like you said, I'm laying in bed, the lights go out, and I'm like, I'm gonna look this up to figure out how to like. I just love that. I would have laid in that bed and just been freaked out until I fell asleep. And then the next day I would have just probably moved on. But I don't know, Dad, what would you do in that situation?
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, sometimes I've heard enough from Aunt Veron's stories, of her living in that haunted house, or
Oh
what she
yeah.
thought was a ghostly house. But yeah, that would really creep me out. I don't put a lot of, I've never experienced anything like that. I'm not saying you don't hear noises or you don't hear things, but it's usually got a logistical answer to it all. So,
I agree.
Yeah.
but I was practicing my ghost notes on my drum kit today, so I do know what a ghost is.
That's great. Well, Allison, so what is next for you then? Like you're still working with clients who, I guess, talk a little bit about that. Like you're helping to guide people who are going through these moments as well.
Yeah.
Self-exploration.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting the way that people have found me over the years. I've had different specialties in my practice just based on like groups of people that find me.
Mhm.
And right now, the people that are finding me are people who are really successful in their careers, men and women, but top level in their careers, and are starting to wonder like, what else is there? Like, I thought this is when I would be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of those people are finding their own way to spirituality, and some of them are just like kind of having a breakdown. And
Right.
right. So I've moved into still doing that in therapy settings, but wanting to start teaching more about what is spiritual awakening, how does it start, what happens, what does it feel like, and then how to give people support as they move through it. So that's why you see on my Instagram page, I've been sort of dipping in and out of it for the last couple of years as I've been going through more deeper, what they call initiations in my
Mm-hmm.
spiritual awakening. There are times where you just kind of like pull back from the world and go deep within
Mm-hmm.
and, work through more stuff. And then once you've integrated it, you can teach about it, but you don't want to be that teacher who's melting down at school and, people are
Right.
like,
You're
are you
not
okay?
right. You're not there
Yeah,
yet.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, do you see that
That's
when,
interesting about professional people because that's true. I'm quite a book reader when it comes to self-help or business or discovery, and trying to think of the name of the book, but it's about what is your next, what's your
mm,
next step, what's
Yeah.
at this age, what are you going to do? And it's kind of a theoretical book that talks for forever in the first 150 pages about how you get there. And by the time you're 40, you kind of already achieved your greatness, but everybody has a lot of
Yes.
greatness beyond 40. So that is kind of cool to think that people who have elevated themselves to be successful, they're looking for something else, and that could be something, as you say,
Yes.
some spiritual awareness, or um, I think that is a big need for people, at my age, and even just
Is
when it all kind of falls apart to where you start getting anxious and you really start panicking about, well, what am I going to do?
mm-hmm.
I've done this work for all my life, and I can't see. And I always thought the same thing. I can't see myself not working, but the longer it goes on, the more you realize that you're giving up the time that you really do need to just kind of let go and become more self
yeah.
appreciative of what you've had, and determine what you can do to better not just yourself but others. And
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yes.
that is a big part of it, to just find that next that you're going to be good at. So that is
Was the
cool.
book was the book that you're talking about called From Strength to Strength?
Yes, that's it. It's there on the bookshelf. Yes,
Oh,
Such a
strength to
good book.
strength. Yep,
Who's the
yep.
author?
I
Do
have
you
to get up
see
and
it?
look.
I can't see
Yeah,
on my bookshelf. He was a columnist for The Atlantic, and it is
I
such
got
a
to
good
read
book
this.
because yeah, you would love it.
From
He's going
strength
to
to
come
strength.
from strength to strength.
Got it.
Arthur Brooks, Arthur
Yes,
C. Brooks.
Arthur C. Brooks. He was a columnist for The Atlantic, I think. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Such a
Yep.
good book. I just read that. One of my clients who's super successful and is having a spiritual awakening. He's like, Allison, you have to read this book. It was an assignment.
Mm.
So I
And
Hmm.
there
love
you
it.
go. That's awesome. Well, I love that. And as you're doing this and you're ready, do you see yourself maybe doing like classes or seminars where you talk about this stuff? Is that in the roadmap, I should say?
Yes, the blueprint does include. I've taught a couple of master classes, and I have another one in the works. But um, yeah, the blueprint does include sort of like a sequence of classes that you sort of, move through together as a small group and can have um, support throughout the week. And yeah, definitely that's in the works.
Oh, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, what else would you like to share? I guess we'll obviously share your social for people to find you. I know you mentioned that you're building out a website, so you'll be sharing that info through socials as well as you get to that. But anything else that you want
Yeah.
to leave us with?
This was such an interesting conversation. People from, the three of us at different stages in life. I really enjoyed um, riffing off of all of our thoughts together. This is just really wonderful.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
Hmm. It's fun.
I really enjoyed
Very
it.
cool.
It's like I said, I always say I could talk with you for hours, but obviously be mindful of everyone's time. But just
But yeah,
so happy to have you. It was so fun talking and introducing you to Dad, and just love everything you're doing. It's so fascinating.
Yeah, it is
thank
very.
you.
I'm curious to hear more about the release of the spirits. That would be a good second topic to get into that.
I
Oh yeah.
agree. Come back
I
for
mean,
more.
I've always been curious about the other dimensions, or better yet, Aunt Vera's ghost stories, because it has hairs rising on the back of your neck every time she would say one, and she
Was it
knew that he was there. He was
was
there.
his
Just
name? Am I imagining this? Was his name Fred?
yes,
Yeah,
the ghost Fred.
the
Yep.
ghost Fred. I mean, those again. I mean, whether it was real or not, I don't know. But those stories were just they
Supposedly
felt very real.
he passed away dying in that house in a fire. He was trapped in the basement. So he was
Oh,
always coming up from the basement, and you could
Mm,
hear him creaking around, and it got to the point where there was actual movement of objects, or
yeah.
mm-hmm.
he'd drag boxes out and put them at the front door or one of her suitcases, and just
Mm-hmm.
try to get her out of the house. And just bringing goosebumps right now talking about it, just because
Yeah.
she was such a good storyteller also.
Yeah.
I definitely had stuff moving in my house too. And I
Yeah.
tell you, I didn't believe in that stuff. That stuff scared me. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't watch scary movies. I mean, I do not dabble in that stuff. But
Yeah. Me
now
neither.
I know how to keep myself safe. I know how to help, like, move those things on. I don't get scared anymore. And I deal with some pretty dark stuff in some of my meditations. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would be happy to talk about that another time.
Oh
And
yeah. Well, we'll definitely have you back. There's obviously no shortage of content that we can share, but this was
the
great.
three of us, yeah.
I just loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't go to the light. Don't go
Yeah.
to the light. Carrie Ann, don't go to the light.
Oh my gosh.
Too
All
funny.
right.
Thank you,
thank
All
guys.
you.
righty. Well, it was
Thanks,
a good time.
Allison.
Good time.
So good
Thanks,
to have
Allison.
you.
Hope to meet you one day. I'm sure I'll make a point of it the next time I'm there at the Edwards Estate.
Yes, we'll get
That's-
together. We'll get together for sure when Dad's here next time.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sounds
All
great.
right. Have a good
Thanks
night,
for coming
everybody.
on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in today. With so many podcasts out there, we are grateful you chose to spend your time with us.
And we'd love to hear from you. So send us your questions, comments, and feedback to info@twoclicksinapod.com, and we might feature your message in a future episode.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social and head over to our YouTube channel where you can watch the full episode live and in living color. You can find us at 2 Clicks in a Pod. That's 2, as in the number, clicks in a pod.
Well, James, until next time, love you.
Love you too, Daddy.